Hi, welcome back to my show. In this episode, once again, I have a really special guest with me today. Her name is Tea Ivanovic. She's an amazing CEO, and she has co-founded her own restaurant. So let's talk to her about her amazing restaurant and what she's done. Hi, Tea, how are you today?
Hi, Anika. It's great to be here. I'm doing well. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm good. Thank you so much for taking on the time to be on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to be here with you.
So please introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about your restaurant.
Sure. So, you gave me a very kind intro. I co-founded my restaurant, Immigrant Food, in November 2019, which was not a great time to open a restaurant, 3 months before the pandemic. But the idea of Immigrant Food really was to create a restaurant group that would celebrate immigrants and do that through the amazing food that immigrants have brought for centuries to this country, but also to really advocate and educate on behalf of immigrants. I think we're living in a very difficult time when it comes to a lot of different social issues, but immigration is very much at the forefront. And we wanted to, as a group, do something about sort of these attacks on immigrants and against immigration, and really advocate and educate on this issue, because after all, America is an immigrant nation. So that was the background of why we decided to start Immigrant Food.
Yeah, I mean, I find it really interesting how, I feel like this is something that's not commonly done. Normally, when you think about restaurants, you think about, particular genres of food, like Chinese restaurants, American, food chains and things. And I really like the idea of, just having a restaurant with foods that are celebrated by immigrants. And I feel like it just shows, your support for immigrants and how you respect them as people.
That's totally correct. I couldn't agree more with you, Anika. It's, all food that we eat has traveled from somewhere and has changed in that process, right? If you think of, the most common foods, if you think of pizzas and, hamburgers, I mean, ketchup is something that was started in old Chinese times and then sort of traveled around the world as different parts of the world were discovered. And so for us, it was a really fun thing to do in terms of on the food side, is to really take these common ingredients and really learn about them and see sort of where it's eaten. I mean, rice is commonly eaten in Asia, but it's also very much eaten in Latin America. It's eaten across Africa and Europe. I mean, it's, taking these spices and flavor profiles and playing with them and really seeing how we can use them in the best way to sort of create new flavors and new flavor profiles. And that was really fun. But at the same time, we always like to say at Immigrant Food, we have two beating hearts. One is the gastronomy, which we were just chatting about, and different flavors and ingredients and how we can use that and play with it. But the second part really was important for us, which is to be a platform for advocacy and for change. And that's what we wanted to do. And we felt that restaurants are a great way to do that, because people gather around the table, right? You have sort of difficult but also fun conversations with friends and family around the dinner table very often. So we thought a restaurant is a great way to talk about this issue that affects all of us, which is immigration.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with you. As you said, food has just traveled from generation to generation. I mean, the material used for fast food, it wasn't always in America. It came from different parts, and I think that you cannot really claim an ingredient to be yours fully, because you never know where it came from. It could be having some kind of background story to it that you did not know of. But ketchup, I never actually knew that it came from China. I thought that was native to America. And it's kind of really interesting to learn and understand that there's so many different cultures out there and different people out there who have different foods, and how they kind of celebrate it and integrate it into their culture.
I absolutely agree. And I think food is something that is so innate to us, right? And we all have our favorite foods, and we have recipes that, our families made, maybe your mom or your dad or your grandma or your, grandpa made, that you really think about when you think about your childhood, and that when you eat that particular food, it brings up a lot of emotion and a lot of memories. And I think that's a really wonderful thing about food, in addition to sort of gathering with friends and family. And I think that's sort of what we try to reflect in our restaurants and immigrant food every day, is making those connections with some of the familiar recipes, but then also at the same time introducing you to different flavors and different ingredients and different profiles that maybe you haven't experienced yet. And I think that's the fun part about food, is that you get to try different foods, and we, at Immigrant Food, because we look at all these different foods from around the world, we get to be really creative about that.
I really like how you said that, because as you said, every food you have, there are numerous amount of foods out there. I've not even had I've never had Korean food before, or Japanese food, and I think that it's really cool to know that there's so many foods out there. So that brings me to my next question, which is that as a CEO of the restaurant, would you say that you kind of incorporate or try to incorporate every single ingredient food into one dish, or would you say that you separately try to have different things?
Yeah, it's a great question, Annika. I mean, when we started off the concept, and we were talking with our chef, who's really, the chefs are the ones that are creating these amazing dishes. I always joke, I do everything but the food, because otherwise you would not be coming to the restaurant if I was making the food. But when we talked about, our former chef, our current chef, or culinary director, about sort of the different ideas and different concepts, I think what's fun is that we don't have to stay with one particular region or one particular influence, and we can sort of combine completely different ingredients. I mean, for example, we have this dish called a Mumbai mariachi, and it's a bowl that we have for lunches, and it's extremely popular, and it's really fun because the idea is that it's Mexican food, but it's with Indian ingredients. And so it's really it kind of uses and cross-references some of the spices that are used in both cultures, but then it uses sort of different ingredients than, let's say you would have in India versus Mexico, and it kind of plays on both of those cultures that have incredible, food cultures themselves. So that's sort of what we try to do, and I feel like there's no limits to how far the chefs can go when they get creative about what new dish they want to incorporate.
Wow, I mean, that's already it's getting my mouth watering. That sounds so delicious. Having a Mexican dish made of Indian ingredients just sounds so amazing. Even having it.
Well, you have to come to Immigrant Food to try it.
Yeah, that brings me to one of my other questions for you, which is that where can people find your restaurant?
So right now we have 3 restaurant locations in Washington, D.C. So you can come. Our first location is at the White House, right next to the White House, which was very intentional because we're a restaurant that's called Immigrant Foods. So we wanted to be next to the White House in 2019 to make a very bold statement about who we are and what we want, what we represent. Then we have another location, if you're in DC, it's called a Union Market District. And then our third and newest location is in a Planet Word. It's called a Planet Word Museum. It's a very cool voice interactive museum about language and how language is also an immigrant. So it's a really great partnership we have with the museum.
It's actually quite interesting how you kind of just placed your restaurant in places where you think that people will actually go there. As you said, for the White House, you chose because immigrant issues and things like that. Kind of is something the White House does. And so people walking around there would go there. And then for the museum, it's already talking about culture, and so people going to the museum would want to go there as well. And then just the general district that you're talking about is a good place for anyone to go. So it's really it's a quite well thought plan. It's really cool.
Thank you. Well, we're very intentional about everything we do, and location is very important. So for us, having partnerships and having like-minded landlords wherever we go is really important.
So have you ever had the president come to your restaurant?
That's funny. We actually had the first gentleman, so the husband of Vice President Kamala Harris, came by the restaurant. I forgot exactly when it was, but he came by with the Secret Service, and of course they ordered a bowl which is called the Vice President's Madam VP Heritage Bowl, which is one of my actually personal favorite bowls, which is in honor of Vice President Kamala Harris because of her immigrant background, which is Jamaican and Indian. And so it's the first immigrant vice president. So we wanted to create something that honored, her background. So that bowl is on the lunch menu, still available, and very delicious.
Patrick, all of the foods you're mentioning just sounds so good. Like I almost feel like just going there right now and just having something to eat.
You should.
Yeah. My last and final question for you is like, what advice would you give to people, like of any sort, not just like in the cooking area or in the management area, but just like anyone? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think probably what I would say is, pursue what you want to do. I mean, and don't be afraid to fail. My background is I came to this country. I was born in Belgium. My family is Serbian. I played tennis, so I had a scholarship to play Division One varsity tennis in college, and then ended up staying, did graduate school here. I was a journalist. I worked in PR, so I was not in restaurants at all. And then sort of by accident got into restaurants and created Immigrant Food, and here we are sort of 5 years later. But I guess my advice would be to sort of don't believe in yourself. I mean, really, like, I didn't know anything about restaurants, and I learned all of it very quickly, and we had a pandemic and we were able to survive that. And so I think you're capable of more than you think, and as long as you believe in yourself, I believe you can achieve anything you want.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. It was quite amazing to talk to you, and everyone out there listening to this episode, I'll be linking Tea's website in the show notes. Feel free to check it out. If you're in Washington, D.C., the website has locations too, I believe, so you can check that out. If not, then you can just type Immigrant Food locations and type Washington, D.C. next and you probably will find that. So once again,
Anika,
Tea,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was like my pleasure to host you. It was quite the conversation. I learned so much about food, and I'm definitely going to check out your restaurant once I go to Washington, D.C.
You absolutely have to. In the meantime, if you're not in DC, you can follow us on Instagram, social media at Immigrant Food.
Yeah, everyone, the website I do believe has the social media links too. So please do follow them if you're interested in food or in the Washington, D.C., where you can actually eat some of the food she mentioned right now. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.